What if I told you that one of America's smallest states is also one of its most militarized? From sprawling army installations to secretive naval bases and advanced weapons testing facilities, New Jersey is essentially a military stronghold hidden in plain sight. With that in mind, you might remember a series of unexplained drone sightings along New Jersey's eastern coast not all that long ago. These mysterious incidences sparked concern over espionage, national security, or just what might be happening behind the fences of the state's military installations. While the full story behind these drones remains unclear, they served as a stark reminder that New Jersey is far more than just the Garden State. It's a critical nerve center for America's defense. But why here? What makes New Jersey so strategically important? And how does this state's vast military infrastructure connect to the bigger picture of national and even global security? Stay tuned to find out, as today we explore why New Jersey is basically a military base. I'm your host Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. To understand why New Jersey is such a military powerhouse, we need to take a step back into the state's early history. Positioned strategically between New York City and Philadelphia, New Jersey has always been at the crossroads of American history, both politically and militarily. During the American Revolution, it earned the nickname the Crossroads of the Revolution, due to the countless battles fought on its soil, including Washington's iconic crossing of the Delaware River. But New Jersey's military significance didn't end with the Revolution. As the United States grew, so did its need for coastal defenses, military infrastructure, and training facilities. The state's proximity to major ports, industrial hubs, and the Atlantic Ocean also made it an ideal location for building and maintaining this robust military presence. From fortified ports to munitions factories, New Jersey steadily evolved into a linchpin of national defense. But by the early 20th century, as the world braced for global conflicts, New Jersey's military infrastructure expanded rapidly. Bases were constructed, arsenals were established, and training camps were filled with soldiers preparing for wars overseas. One of the earliest and most notable of these installations was Fort Monmouth, a base that would become a pioneering center for military communications and technology. And so with that, let's begin our journey there. As the United States prepared for new global conflicts in the early 20th century, New Jersey's military infrastructure needed to adapt rapidly. No longer just a strategic waypoint between major cities, no, the state became a testing ground for emerging technologies and a training hub for soldiers heading into battle. This shift began with the establishment of Fort Monmouth, a facility that would play a crucial role in advancing military communications and technology. Located on Route 35, and just a few minutes from Long Beach, the base was originally opened for the purpose of the Army on two defunct racetracks. As the stronghold rose, its name changed from the original concept of Camp Vale to Fort Monmouth, following the transfer of the Army Signal Corps command from Fort Leavenworth to here in 1924. The Signal Corps launched the Army's first radio-equipped weather balloon in 1928. In 1938, they began testing radio detection of aircraft, radar, and so on. Not unlike what was going on in Great Britain at the time. This research also led to naval vessel detection, and was done in coordination with searchlight-controlled anti-aircraft guns. Then, after President Roosevelt declared a state of emergency in May of 1941, the Army purchased more land to use and incorporate into the Fort Monmouth stronghold. By June, the base was already home to an additional 1,200 civilian employees and 28 officers. During the war, the base expanded to house an additional 21,000 officers and enlisted men, most of whom were there as a part of the Signal Corps Officer Candidate School. The operations were a success. Thousands of these officers were trained here before the end of the war. But by 1946, they had also proven the concept of celestial communication, a breakthrough that I might add happened before the Russians launched Sputnik. This was done by bouncing radio signals off the moon so that crews positioned at stations across America could read them upon return to Earth. As important as it was, the fort closed in 2011, despite being the Army's communications and electronics command headquarters since the 1980s. These departments were relocated to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland around 2008. Since its closure, parts of the fort were deemed for environmental cleanup and temporary restriction, whereas others were opened publicly. The cleaning effort mostly centered around removing things like lead paint and asbestos from the site so that the larger structures could be dismantled and then the grounds could be opened for tourists, guests, or even developers. Not to mention, they also needed to deal with the Army's landfill, which proved to be far more difficult. Now controlled by the Fort Monmouth Economic Revitalization Authority, cleaning is still ongoing, but most of the historic site has been cleared for the recent development that film studios will be located on this land for upcoming Netflix productions. Anyhow, as the fort wound down its operations in the early 21st century, New Jersey's military focus began to shift towards larger and more integrated facilities. This transition marked the evolution in the state's strategic role from specialized communication centers to multifaceted military powerhouses capable of supporting all branches of the U.S. Armed Forces. While Fort Monmouth helped pioneer military technology, the changing landscape of warfare required New Jersey to consolidate and expand its military operations altogether, meaning the state's strategic importance only grew as the U.S. military sought integrated bases capable of supporting multiple branches of armed forces. In other words, this evolution led to the development of Joint Base McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst, a modern facility that embodies New Jersey's transformation into a military powerhouse. Perhaps an easier way to look at this is that there are currently 7 large military installations in the state of New Jersey. The primary tenants are the Army, Navy, and Air Force, but elements of the Marine Corps and Coast Guard also host defense critical missions here. Named after a veteran of the War of 1812 and the Civil War, Dix was opened in 1917 as a mobilizing and training base for the Great War. Since then, the size of the base has shrunk and grown through war and peace, leaving it with the current population of 7,700 military servicemen as of the census of 2020 anyhow. Split between the townships of Springfield, New Hanover, and Pemberton, this is a substantial military base in America's modern force structure. While its common name assigns it as a fort and thereby an Army facility, it should be noted that it is indeed placed under Air Force Air Mobility Command. In fact, the AMC supervises the logistics arm of the fleet, is responsible for the projection of power overseas, and the movement of air cargo within the U.S. mainland. The base first took on this role in 1952. Around that time, the 87th Air Base Wing was created to transfer American forces training or located along the East Coast on their way to the ongoing Korean War. Though, following the war and advances in aviation, the base would eventually become home to the famous long-range C-17s, C-130s, and KC-46 aerial refueling tankers. While the Joint Base serves as a critical operational hub, New Jersey's contribution to national defense extends well beyond troop deployment and logistics. The state also plays a key role in research and development, particularly in munitions and advanced weaponry. This aspect of New Jersey's military infrastructure is perhaps best exemplified by the Picatinny Arsenal, a historic site that has also evolved into one of the country's leading defense production and testing facilities. Picatinny is currently the location of the Combat Capabilities Development Center, the Joint Program Executive Office of Armaments and Ammunition, a Naval Sea Systems Command Center, and the Tri-State Resident Agency's Region 4 Northeast Counterintelligence Command. The CCDC has its primary base here in Picatinny, with secondary locations in Illinois, Maryland, and New York. The CCDC is mostly munitions-focused, as you'd expect from a historic armory, but also experiments with and develops fire control assets, conducts wind tunnel testing, and integrates new weapons with existing military vehicles and new platforms. The Naval Sea Systems Command Center serves a similar purpose for the U.S. Navy, considering that the Navy maintains a large fleet that does face challenges in modernization and maintaining readiness. For example, one of the problems being addressed since the beginning of the Houthi missile attacks against merchant ships off the coast of Yemen is the limited supply of the anti-air missiles aboard America's mainstay warship. The current design gives destroyers 90 launch cells for medium and long-range anti-air missiles. with some ships being upgraded to accommodate 6 more. Before the outbreak of this crisis, there was no effective way to replenish spent missiles on destroyers while at sea. In one example, USS Carney shot down 65 missiles and drones aimed at them, passing civilian vessels and civilian areas in Israel. This made Carney the Navy's ace, but even if each kill only required 1 missile, it would have used up 2/3 of their ammunition. Carney had to return all the way from the east coast of Africa to its home port in Jacksonville, Florida, just to rearm. Hence, to avoid that scenario, the Naval Sea System Command Center in New Jersey was one of the organizations responsible for developing at-sea reloading. Their developments rapidly achieved results when the first at-sea reloading was conducted from the Naval Auxiliary Ship Washington Chambers to the Chosen Cruiser on October the 11th of last year. Given how many major assets are stationed there, the presence of the TSRA Counterintelligence Command shouldn't be surprising. The CIC's mission is the most defensive of all, being responsible for investigating and neutralizing espionage threats probing into America's weapons development and defense apparatus. And it's a good thing that they do because that is a constant mission for the team, especially to repel Chinese, Russian, and Iranian espionage and sabotage efforts within the US. And while the Picatinny Arsenal is focused on munitions development and counterintelligence, New Jersey's strategic value also lies in its logistical capabilities. The state's proximity to major ports and industrial centers has made it an ideal location for storage, preparation, and deployment of military assets. This role became especially critical during World War II, when the U.S. Army and Navy needed a safe and efficient way to move explosives and armaments to the European theater. To meet this need, they established the Naval Weapons Station Earle, a logistics and communication hub that continues to serve as a vital link in America's defense chain to this very day. During World War II, the United States Army and Navy saw the need to build infrastructure for explosives near the port and railroad terminals in New York. And by 1943, with the war in full effect, the matter was getting dire, as nobody wanted accidents to occur within a major port. Authorities acted fast, and within just 1 year, a new facility was built on the south side of Sandy Hook Bay. The new facility was split across 2 locations. The inland portion was located in Leonardo, whereas the coastal component was in Monmouth, with the 2 connected by a secure 12-mile railroad. This railroad originally ran through Fort Monmouth as well, but with the fort's decommissioning in 2011, it no longer serves any purpose in supplying weapons to that station. Most of the work was completed in June of 1944, and the site would be crucial to the safe shipment of weapons to the European theater from the invasion of Normandy onwards. When the war eventually ended, the pier remained open to support American operations that remained in Europe, resupplying warships and eventually for the export of weapons to Allied nations throughout the Cold War. Interestingly, the pier here is also a permanent gravesite to the river steamer Alexander Hamilton, which caught fire and sank on November the 8th, 1977. And although the wreck was only meant to be left there temporarily, its silhouette in the water is still visible by satellite imagery today. In more recent news, though, as of September last year, NWS Earle became the home base of the attack submarine New Jersey. The newest Block IV Virginia-class submarine has been upgraded substantially compared to its older sister. USS New Jersey is capable of remaining submerged for 3 months without need for resupply due to her SG-9 nuclear reactor, as well as her deep storage capacity, armed for surveillance, anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare, precise missile strikes, mine laying, and other missions across the Atlantic Ocean. She is the latest American submarine and one of the most advanced designs created in the past 30 years. With USS New Jersey now stationed at the Naval Weapons Station Earle, the base continues to play a very important role in America's naval strategy. But the story doesn't end here. In fact, just across the water lies yet another chapter in the story: the Sandy Hook Peninsula. Now, right across the water from the weapons station, there are the decommissioned military bases on the Sandy Hook Peninsula. This peninsula hosted an absolutely essential installation, the Sandy Hook Proving Grounds. Established in 1874, this site became the temporary testing grounds for new weapons deployed under contract with the War Department, a critical step before these armaments were either accepted into military service or rejected. The Sandy Hook Proving Grounds were a part of a broader effort by the U.S. military to modernize its arsenal in a time when global conflicts and technology advancements were reshaping the nature of warfare. This site provided a controlled and secure environment where engineers and military personnel to evaluate the performance, accuracy, and safety of a wide range of military technologies. So, over the decades, weapons ranging from handheld grenades and small arms to heavy artillery like cannons and machine guns were put through rigorous testing protocols here. Testing at the Sandy Hook Proving Grounds involved more than just firing weapons. The facility's team conducted comprehensive evaluations of ballistic performance, impact analysis, and structural integrity. Weapons were fired into natural sand dunes or against specially constructed barriers, allowing analysts to gather critical data on how the weapons performed under different conditions. This information was essential, not only for determining the suitability of new designs, but also for refining existing technologies. One of the unique aspects of Sandy Hook's role in the military-industrial complex was its contribution to the standardization of weaponry. You see, by maintaining a centralized testing facility, the War Department ensured that all new weapon systems met a consistent standard before they were distributed to troops. This practice helped avoid the logistical nightmares faced by other militaries that struggled with inconsistent ammunition calibers or generally unreliable equipment. The data and experience gained at Sandy Hook directly contributed to successful campaigns and conflicts ranging from the Spanish-American War to World War I. However, as the 20th century progressed, the Sandy Hook Proving Grounds faced new challenges. The increasing range and power of modern artillery and ballistics weapons required larger and more isolated testing environments than a compact peninsula could provide. Advanced weapons, including long-range artillery and early prototypes of guided missiles, needed miles of open space for testing, something that Sandy Hook simply couldn't offer. And so it was. The dismantling of the proving grounds in the 1960s marked the end of an era. Only a few large concrete structures and rusted mountings remain, standing as silent monuments to a time when Sandy Hook was a cutting-edge testing ground for the American military. These remnants offer a tangible link to the past, reminding visitors that the peninsula's quiet landscapes were once alive with the sounds of weapons and military drills. Today, the Sandy Hook Peninsula is part of the Gateway National Recreation Area, where historical tours and educational programs help preserve this special American legacy. Lastly, but certainly one of the most important on a day-to-day level, is the Coast Guard Training Center in Cape May. This is the 5th largest military training facility on the East Coast. With more than 4,000 graduating cadets annually, the Cape May base sits on 350 acres with 86 buildings, 91 cadet barracks, plus rental housing and tenant buildings. Cape May is also the site for training Coast Guard petty officers, Coast Guard recruiters, and company commanders. Under Admiral Carl Schultz, the training center has set new standards to improve recruitment and training in building what he calls Ready Workforce 2030. Writing in his official publication, the Ready Workforce 2030 outline, quote, "The resiliency, flexibility, and adaptability of our workforce is at the heart of what has made the Coast Guard successful for well over 200 years, and it remains our greatest strength. This rate of change will only continue to accelerate. The 4th Industrial Revolution is well underway, with deep implications for service missions, capabilities, and challenges. Continuing demographic and social trends are fundamentally altering the American population from which the service recruits and serves. We cannot use past thinking to resolve current and future challenges. We cannot default to doing something because it has always been done a certain way. We must be forward-thinking, innovative, adaptive, and willing to accept prudent risk. This training center, as well as other Coast Guard facilities, are grappling with the challenges of not only enhancing the standards of the force, but also fully embracing a force modernization initiative. This measure is also sought out through improving service member benefits, out-of-service work benefits, and many other factors. The Cape May Center is where most of this comes to a head and must be introduced and enforced. As the service that is always ready, the Coast Guard is one of the most active and important military branches in the country. And thankfully, despite many changes in our world today, it's still highly adaptive and seeking to make improvements necessary to keep the country safe. So, as we've seen, New Jersey's military infrastructure is far more than a collection of isolated bases. Each site, from Fort Monmouth's pioneering technologies to the strategic logistics of the Naval Weapons Station Earle, contributes to a larger narrative of defense, readiness, and national security. Whether through training, testing, or tactical operations, New Jersey remains a critical component of America's military strategy, proving that the Garden State is indeed a military base hiding in plain sight. And I think that pretty much sums the story up, but before going, I'd like to leave you all with an open call for video topics. You can submit them over at the Patreon page by scanning this QR code or clicking the link in the description. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, this is Ryan Socash, signing off.